If a demon designed a sport, it would look like Rikudo. Most fighting manga are about chasing a dream. You know the type. One more match, one more rival, one more power-up. But Rikudo's about a kid the world threw away, then strapped into a ring where his pain is the entertainment. Every round, they tell you he's a boxer, but the longer you read, the less it feels like boxing, and the more it feels like a public execution in slow motion. And I'm not exaggerating either. I've read all 241 chapters to answer one question. Was Rikudo anything more than a victim, or was he really born to suffer? And when it comes to main characters who had it worse, Azami Riku would be on top of that list. Before the bell even rang, he was already fighting for his life with an abusive father, a drug-addicted mother, and a house where violence was the norm and affection that no longer existed. A kid born into a horror story. And the worst part, you knew what kind of time the series was on when the panel started with little Riku punching a man who just hanged himself. His dad's body still swinging, and this was on page 1. Riku's first fight was throwing a desperate punch at a corpse because even in death, this man was still something Riku had to hit in order to survive. So before there was a ring, a ref, or a crowd, the manga makes one thing clear. Riku steps into boxing because his life has already been turned into a nightmare. And that's important because it all leads to the first real punch that changed Riku to violence for the rest of his life. Tokudozawa was someone Riku met as a kid. He's the Hiko Seijiro of the series, the one who shows Riku how to throw a punch, and the person who taught him not to be a loser like his dead suicidal father. Since Riku had no real family, Uncle Tokudozawa becomes the anchor that keeps him pushing through the darkest of times. So it looks like a regular punch at first, something simple you teach a kid who can protect himself. But the first time Riku really uses it, he ends up killing a man with his own hands. From that point on, no one saw a scared kid anymore. What they saw was a weapon. In Riku's darkest moments, after being abandoned by his mother and abusive father, he found the one person who gave him meaning, his first true love, Ihara. She was caring and saw a glimpse into the horrors he went through by the bruises on his body. But instead of flinching, she welcomes Riku with full embrace. And for a boy who's only ever been hit or used, that tiny bit of kindness hits harder than any punch. Ihara becomes the one bright star he wants to protect, but sadly will be the last fragile link that's about to change the trajectory of his life forever. Ihara's character becomes the sole reason Riku wants to get stronger after experiencing one of the worst nights of his life. He's forced to watch Yakuza thugs assault the person he cares about the most because he was too weak to do anything. That's the moment where everything flips. From then on, Riku vows to never be weak again, even if it means dumping all his fear and anger into the ring. This was the turning point where I stopped just reading Riku and started putting myself in his shoes, and it's crazy how the story stacks these events so well that it doesn't feel like some random tragedy, but made it fit like a cruel puzzle snapping into place. But is this really the start of a boxer chasing greatness? Or just a kid the world decided is only good for taking damage? A ring that becomes his cage. After the incident, Riku doesn't walk into some warm and welcoming boxing family. Tokudozawa drags him to his old coach, Baba Shinji, who trained him back when he was an OBF champ. For Riku, this feels like a test, a chance to finally walk the path to becoming stronger. But Baba and Riku's relationship starts rocky because to Baba, Riku's just another kid playing boxing. However, Baba had no idea that Riku was a kid with the same fist and the same dead eyes that killed before. And Riku was so desperate to become the strongest that he took Baba's beatings for years, and because of that, their relationship hardens over time. Years later, we see a whole new Riku, stronger than ever before. This panel not only shows growth in Azami's height, but in sheer aura that feels almost inhuman. The people who once called him a murderer only made him look more like a monster, and that's where you really see how the adults around him start using that pain. And for Baba, Riku was a ticket back into the spotlight, nothing more and nothing less. Baba sharpens Riku, but every step forward turns that guilt and trauma into a better product in the ring. A kid who killed a man becomes the perfect poster boy for violent boxing, and the people are paying to see what that pain turns him into. But the crazy part, Baba ends up as one of the first adults who believes in Riku and benefits from his hurt, and Rikudo never lets you forget that contradiction. The goated thing about Rikudo is that you see Riku level up. Even his whole design screams that he's a cerebral fighter. By this point in the story, he's stronger, getting real matches, and stacking wins against other boxing geniuses. But all of those wins carry a heavy price. A better body that could end his career for good. He's built like a champion and held together like an old man at the same time. But through all the struggle and by trading blows with other monsters like him, Riku learned that there's actual fun in boxing. The sport was never really about winning or losing. It was about understanding your opponent in front of you, about making a connection through one's fist. Which is insane because up to this point, boxing has only taken things from him. And in the middle of that realization, he kills Kamishito, a deadly opponent gone by his own hand. For Riku, it felt like a huge loss. He wanted to fight Kamishito again and to really learn what it meant to have fun in the ring. It just further showed the terrifying reality of the risk you take when becoming a boxer and what it costs to push past your own physical and mental limitations. By this point, Riku's winning by sacrificing himself, and every win takes a bite out of his delicate body. The higher he climbs, the more it feels like you're not watching a rising champion, but the most decorated victim in the building. After reading 240 chapters of this dark boxing manga, there's one question that remains stuck in thought. Was Rikudo really about a fighter's path to glory, or about a kid the world never stopped victimizing? On paper, Riku ends the story as a monster in a ring. He's hella strong, he's had Goliath-ass matches, and has people in his corner, even when a girl that actually cared about him. It looked like the kind of ending any sports protagonist would want, but when you rewind to how he got there, it doesn't feel like a dream he chose. Before his mom became a drug addict, it seemed like they were one big happy family, but during one of Riku's brutal matches, we caught a quick glimpse that something went horribly wrong. And when you get beat into flashback land, you know the character's about to get a crazy power-up of a lifetime. Riku's origin story is killing a man just to survive. His first mentor taught him how to punch, not how to heal. If anything, Tokurozawa was kind of unhinged when we first got introduced to his character. The coaches around Riku turned his trauma into a brand and became successful off it. I mean, Riku does make his own choices. He kept walking forward, getting stronger, decided who to protect, and refused to become the monster people wanted him to be. But almost every choice happens inside of a cage that other people built for him. The system only ever gave him one tool, his broken fist. I do think Riku was a victim of his own circumstances due to his parents' actions, which led to his career as a genius fighter. If he was led to boxing through passion, Rikudo would have been a completely different story. Instead, we read about a kid who was born to suffer, trying to build a life using the same violence that ruined him. And that's what makes this sport manga feel like pure horror and gloves. Rikudo understands better than most battle manga, pain. Not just, ow, that punch hurt, but the kind of pain that sits in your bones, in your past, and in your reputation. From the first chapter to the last, pain was always with them, in his home, in the gym, even in his techniques. And the story never pretends to magically disappear once he gets stronger. It breaks him down, it turns him to a killer as a child, isolates him, makes adults see him as a tool, and leaves his body barely holding together. The manga was never pushing that pain is good. It's saying that once the world has given you nothing but pain, the only choice left is to whether you let it hollow you out or turn it into resolve. Riku's path is one of the hardest a main character has ever walked. But even when the story finally ends, it doesn't feel like he's made it. It feels like the strongest version of himself is still somewhere waiting at the end of all that pain. Rikudo's about a kid born to suffer, but there's another series where that suffering turns into pure chaos. There's a manga that makes Baki look soft, and that's not clickbait. Click here and you'll see what I mean. Ja mata.